The 2026 Formula One season has been many things. Depending on who you ask, they could say it's been one of the best in recent times, or it has been one of the worst in recent times. Maybe it's been full of amazing racing, maybe it's been full of artificial racing. Regardless of our differing opinions, at least we all have our opinions, and it is great to discuss them to understand other people's point of views and wants out of the sport, until some rage-baiting or parasocial asshat gets into the mix and we have to deal with their nonsense now. But I mention all this because I have noticed that certain fans of certain drivers can hold different opinions of the sport this year. In particular, I have seen Leclerc fans dogging on the new regs for being artificial and slower and whatnot, while I have seen Hamilton fans praising the new regs for the simpler cars and better racing. This applies to plenty of other drivers as well, and something I have noticed with this is that the fans of the older or newer drivers have positive views of these regs, while the fans of the current generation of drivers hold more negative views. Of course, there are outliers to be considered, but generally, that is the case. So this got me thinking, the drivers we see succeeding this year, think of Lewis Hamilton, Kimi Antonelli, Ollie Behrman, they're either pretty old or pretty young, while the drivers we see struggling this year like Max, Charles, Lando, George, etc. all come from the 2016 and 2020 period of driver entries and should be the current gen of drivers who should be running the sport currently, not the old heads and the babies. I mean, this is pretty interesting, no? For many years, we have heard how people like Max, like Charles, like Lando will dominate the sport for the future and beyond, and while Max did do that for a while, why are drivers like Kimi Antonelli and potentially others like Hadjar or Behrman routing so much sooner than anticipated and stealing the spotlight away from Max, Charles, or Lando? So I did some more thinking. I have rewatched a few races from this year, along with looking at what the drivers had to say after most races, and found a potential answer, an answer made more clear to me by looking at the recent past as well. So I would like to share what I think is going on with some drivers this year, and why some are either really struggling or really succeeding, and if there's any correlation to the generation of driver they belong in. Subscribe if the impeding speed of time sometimes keeps you awake at night, and let's get to quacking now.
A good weather for a race, but especially for a dog.
Let's start by highlighting the good drivers have found in the season. Let's start with the unks of the sport, and these are the drivers I would say have raced in F1 starting from 2001 to 2013. They have decades of experience in the sport, and one could only assume that some of it has aided their driving this year. Drivers from this era, of course, are Fernando Alonso, Lewis Hamilton, Nico Hülkenberg, Sergio Perez, and Valtteri Bottas. Let's quickly knock three drivers out since I'm sure you could guess why. Fernando Alonso, of course, has been very vocal in his disdain for these new cars, constantly blaming the batteries on everything. Batteries are the reason why he is P20 every round. Batteries are the reason why he can't get into Q2. Batteries are the reasons why he can't get an erection. I mean, in theory, he should be having a horrible season. And results-wise, absolutely, let's not kid ourselves, but his driving this year has actually not been that bad. That's something I find is only present in this generation of driver. They hate the cars they drive, but actually aren't doing too bad in them. So Alonso's driving has actually been quite good since he isn't bending the car every round or going wide and just can't drive. One can only fear what he can do if the AMR 26B spec is as good as it could be. Another two we should quickly knock out the way are, of course, the Cadillac pair of Checo and Bottas. Checo is essentially the same as Alonso, where he hates the car he drives, but does quite well in it ironically. Although the Cadillac is a better car, so Checo does have the better results. Plus, Caddy are brand new in the sport, so perhaps he is motivated to be as good as possible to help them. The outlier in this generation, though, is Valtteri. Bottas has actually been having a rough season. Actually, I don't know if rough is the correct word. Let's use quiet. He has been having a quiet season since, do you even remember he's on the grid? We see Checo often on the broadcast because he is actually fighting drivers, or his car is breaking in places you never thought possible, but Valtteri's just quiet. He is driving a lonesome race in P20 like every week, and it's really tough to pin it on good or bad driving, because he could maybe do more and be with Checo more often. However, does it really matter? He was hired to help Caddy run races and build team experience. He has been doing that well this year, so I don't know. Let me know what you think of his season so far. Now for the other two unk drivers who have actually been scoring results, Nico Hülkenberg and Lewis Hamilton. I say that, but Nico also doesn't doesn't have a single point this year, but I could explain. Nico all year long has just been so damn unlucky. Audi have had a lot of issues this year, and it sucks because their drivers have been on it, nearly scoring points in every round. But Nico always has to face some bullshit, big or small, that takes him out of the points running. I mean, look at last race. The guy was fighting for P9 and maybe P8 too, and he looked more poised to take results for the team, but somehow a little piece of gravel that was kicked up by Lawson going wide flew so hard and fast that it hit the emergency kill switch button that stopped all power in the car. His engine for once wasn't malfunctioning and he was finally able to fight for points. And what happens? A rock kills his car. You just cannot write that. So yes, Hulk is pointless so far, but he really shouldn't be if Audi had a more reliable engine. And I guess if the gravel wasn't so close, I don't know. Which leaves us with Lewis Hamilton. Lewis, since he has driven the cars, has praised them. Of course, he doesn't like the battery shenanigans this year, but that's where his criticisms end. For years now, Lewis has pushed for F1 to get more simpler and smaller with the aero, since for a while, F1 thought the solution to bad racing was having giant downforce monster cars that totally don't produce a lot of dirty air. Lewis has wanted these smaller, simpler cars for a while, and no kidding. He has been driving the best he has since 2021, dare I say, and maybe ground effects really were the issue for him. Batteries aside, the driver can make much more of a difference driving these cars, which is what Lewis loves. Ground effects had to be ran in specific ways so the car doesn't disqualify itself, and this, of course, limited Lewis's ability. Now this year, we are seeing it for the first time in a while, which has resulted in him being second in the championship and the only non-Mercedes winner this year. Technically second if you include Lando at the Miami Sprint. Which, speaking of Mercedes winner, let us transition to the next generation of driver this year, the babies of the grid. These are the next generation of drivers who are all in their early 20s and ready to take success in a few years' time. I classify these drivers as basically the ones who joined only a couple years ago or will join for the next couple of years. Think people like Kamara, Solov, and Slater, who are basically guaranteed F1 sooner or later. But the ones currently on the F1 grid who are in this generation, in my opinion, are of course Kimi Antonelli, Oliver Behrman, Isaac Hadjar, Gabriel Bortoleto, Arvid Lindblad, Liam Lawson, Franco Colapinto, and Oscar Piastri, who is a weird one, might I add. I think Oscar is the Max of this generation, not talent-wise, but timing-wise. Max joined in 2015 when all of his peers who are similar in age to him all joined in 2018 or 19. Oscar is pretty much the same since he is closer in age and upbringing with people like Hadjar and Gabby compared to people like Lando or George. Anyways, as you may have guessed by now, these drivers have been loving life so far. Maybe not Oscar, who drives for McLaren, which genuinely seems to be a 50-50 chance of life or death right now, but the others are enjoying the season. Franco Colapinto and Liam Lawson had disastrous 2025 seasons that very well could have seen them fired and no one caring, but now they're having brilliant 2026 seasons that is seeing them back in the points and loved by fans once more. Lindblad, of course, is the only rookie this season, so you would think he would be struggling with the basics, but no, Lindblad has been scoring and fighting for points often, and while there is a mistake here and there, it's not too atypical for a rookie. Gabby we basically already discussed with Hulkenberg, since again, both have been on it, but their Audi engine sure hasn't, which is maybe more so bad for Gabby since he does have the slight edge over Hulk. Plus he did score the team's only point so far. Isak, despite typical second Red Bull seat troubles, has actually been doing relatively well, minus a few incidents here and there. It's clear he will get better with time as he gets more accustomed with his Red Bull car, and honestly, for a second Red Bull driver next to Max in their very second season, he is doing way better than expected. Oliver Behrman, when his engine isn't dying or nearly dying himself, has been so good this year. One of the best things about Behrman last year, and especially this year, is you cannot tell he's new. He makes little to no mistakes when driving and is able to extract so much pace out of his car. It's just wild to think that this is his second season in the sport. But of course, Kimi Antonelli eclipses all of this. He is a generational talent, the generational talent from this era, and while drivers like Behrman and Slater do show immense pace as well, they're just not Kimi. 5 wins in a row is no fluke, best car or not, and yeah, generational. Something that does separate this generation of driver though from the Unks is that most of their feedback this year seems neutral at worst. Yes, they do show some discrepancies with the batteries this year, but most just see it as something to shrug and adapt to. They seem more concerned with driving the car as fast as possible, and for the most part, love the new cars and how they handle. These drivers, in my opinion, have made the best overtaking moves this year so far, and whenever there's a battle on track, these guys are almost always the victors in them. Which just leaves the current generation. I would classify this gen of driver from 2015 to 2021. However, the 2021 kids are dead now, so maybe just 2019. These drivers, of course, are George Russell, Charles Leclerc, Max Verstappen, Lando Norris, Alex Albon, Carlos Sainz, Pierre Gasly, Esteban Ocon, and the Stroll. Lance Stroll is Lance Stroll, so of course, he is not doing well in these cars. Has he done well in any of them? So now for the real drivers, and Ocon seems to be one who wishes the old cars were still driven, since even before the season started, he said he believed these cars would lead to worse racing since the simpler aero cars would lead to more dirty air being produced. Right, maybe that's why he struggles in the sport a lot. Ocon, of course, has also been having his worst season yet, and potentially his final one as well, as Ayo Komatsu sees Kamara doing well in F2 and Yuki sitting there very affectionately. The outlier in this generation, though, is Ocon's mortal enemy, Pierre Gasly. Of course, he has criticized the batteries and what have you, but he has actually said quite positive things about the cars, and especially his cars, Alpine, are of course performing much better than last year. However, we do have to consider that because Alpine were as dog shit as they were, that maybe he isn't thinking logically and has a lot of bias in his answers. Regardless, he has been having a stellar season so far, and there is no reason to think why it won't continue. Back to doom and gloom though, Sainz and Albon we could group together since they of course are teammates at Williams and would probably rather die than drive the car again. Williams have had their many issues with the cars, and even when they work, they just look miserable afterwards. Both have said many times that they don't like what they are driving and quite hate it actually, but Albon has said it's better for the viewer, so I guess there's that. Lando and Max we could also group together since the title protagonists of last year are being neutered hard this year. Both have actually driven quite well despite their very negative comments on the cars this year, and one could only assume that they would have at least one win by now had their car not be dog shit with 4 wheels. Also, Lando in particular has been played with the worst reliability this year, which certainly ain't helping him. So finally, let us group Russell and Leclerc together since, yeah, George Russell and Charles Leclerc were hailed as the potential title protagonists this year, but ironically, it's their teammates that are 1-2 right now, with them actually being 3 and 4. Why is this? Well, because they can't drive the car, obviously. George Russell had a dominant round 1, with Charles being supremely well there too, but round 2 and beyond is where everything fell apart since George has faced car issue after car issue, and even when he isn't, he still has a literal child running laps around him, even when he should be nerfed. And then concerning Charles, he has just not driven well straight up since he has committed mistakes in every round so far, I believe, and it's not like the mistakes lead to results, right? The drivers who should be running rings around the grid are being dogged on by the unks and babies of the sport, so of course, this makes me question why this is. So enough stalling, what is it? Are the current gen of drivers somehow all washed at 28, while the babies and unks are simply better? Were the 2019 rookies really frauds like some like to believe? Why can't I find a partner still? Well, before I reveal my answer, just know that this is purely speculation. There isn't a set answer for why things are the way they are this year, but it won't stop me from hypothesizing. So I believe things are like this year because the unks of the sport have raced all types of cars. They have raced low downforce, high downforce, medium downforce, EV engines, full combustion engines, hybrid engines. They have raced many a car before. Perhaps this benefits them this year since they are able to better and quickly understand these cars before others could, or at least as well as them. And as for the babies of the sport, they are babies. They raced one season in ground effects, and in Oscar's case, still a short amount in the ground effect era. So coming into these cars with less downforce, especially with F2 wheels still lingering in their minds, they were able to quickly adapt since they had less unlearning to do, of course allowing them to be fast out the gate. A lot of the junior formulas are of course low in downforce, so because F1 this year is lower on downforce for the first time in a long while, the rookies are able to quickly adapt and be be right at home, which then explains why the current gen are having trouble. These guys, with the exception of Max, Carlos, and I guess Ocon too, but like Oscar racing this period for a very short amount of time, joined the sport where the downforce was at its highest. They were able to push the car to extreme lengths because the downforce was so high and thus sort of robotic and predictable in nature. These drivers are also the first sim racers to come up, and in sim racing, the best way to be fast is to be robotic. Take the smoothest and most conventional lines and perfect them to be as fast as possible. F1 had similarities since the downforce allowed them to be very fast, so they adapted heavily to that style of car. And while 2022 did decrease it a little bit, it very quickly went back up. So for many years, these drivers have only known high downforce machinery compared to the unks who have driven many other types of F1 car, or the babies who never got too used to the heavy downforce. So the fact that 2026 comes and all that downforce experience they have built up for nearly a decade is gone, that is a lot of unlearning and relearning they have to do now, which puts them in their current pickles. Again, this is just my explanation and reasoning for why they are struggling hard this year. I'm sure you guys have your own theories too, so feel free to let me know, and perhaps this can get us closer to the ultimate truth. Anyways, those are my thoughts on this issue. This year has been a very interesting one, and personally, I love it. Although it is gonna suck once the cream of the crop of the next generation are in the sport, since for a while after that, we are just gonna get mid after mid. Anyways, I wanna give a quick shout out to Amarillo Flock for the continued support. I'm actually joining a few cool benefits as well as just helping me out. Anyways, if you enjoyed today's video, make sure you have a like and subscribe since it really helps me out. Make sure to let me know in the comments what you think of this. And as always, have an amazing day.
Good weather for the duck.